next to.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just checking you could see it. Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alliance of Independent Authors, Fiction and Nonfiction self-publishing podcast with me, not Adam Croft, but Orna Ross, standing in for Adam this evening, and Sacha Black. Hi, Sacha.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, so we are very excited to be talking about one of our favorite topics. We both talk about this ourselves quite a bit, and it is content marketing for fiction and for nonfiction. We're going to be looking at what they share, what's different, what is content marketing, and why you should be doing it to some degree, no matter what kind of other marketing you do, I think, anyway. And we'll talk about that. But before we get into it, we'd just like to talk a little bit. Sacha is, as many of you know, the blog editor for the Alliance of Independent Authors blog on our Self-Publishing Advice Centre. And we've been changing it up over there. Do you want to tell the people what's going on?
So the changes are because of algorithmic changes from Google, who made a lot of changes towards the end of last year to increase Google's natural language processing abilities, because lots of us are now doing searches on Google using our voices, so we say, and hopefully we have a device in a house with a female name, and I won't set it off, but we'll say, hey, that person, and then we'll ask a question, or we'll do it on our phones. And so Google wanted to change all of the algorithms to make sure that it was picking up and giving highly relevant searches. As part of that, we have to change the way that we are doing our blogs. So we need to do slightly longer form blogs. We need to make sure we are answering a very tight question on each of the blogs and providing things like case studies, which hopefully some of you have seen that we've already been starting to add case studies from our members. So I suppose those are the biggest changes, I would say.
Yeah, so for those of you who, this is actually plays right into our topic of this evening, because it is all about search is very much part of content marketing, how you get found, and why one of the reasons you do content marketing of any kind is because of search. And you need traffic for content marketing to work in terms of bringing people back to your own website. And one of the best ways to attract traffic is to blog consistently on a particular topic. And so, yeah, we have been blogging since, I think, 2013, probably, over 2,000 posts on the ALLi blog. And what we have traditionally done is had all sorts of topics. We've blogged pretty much every day for years, and our members write the most of our members or our advisors or our team write our blogs. You have to be a member to contribute to the blog, and that will continue. And we will, of course, continue taking member input in various ways, both through the case studies, but also, we will still have room for member posts in a different sort of way. So it's exciting because it's giving us the chance to really delve deeply into some topics. And the first one we did was last week, ISBNs, everybody's favorite, and really comprehensive, huge post, which we did along with Nielsen here in the UK, who manage the ISBNs for authors and publishers here in the UK. And they did, gave us some fantastic insider tips from their perspective. But of course, authors make up their own mind around ISBNs. So we teased out all the issues around that. And today we released our second big long post, which is the ultimate guide to content marketing for fiction. And that's one of the things we're going to be talking about tonight, because tonight here in London, and a lot of people think that content marketing is, what I've just been talking about, the ALLi blog type situation, nonfiction, informational stuff that then at the end of it you have a link to your book. And of course that is a very widely used model, but content marketing works for everything, poetry and fiction also. So the blog today particularly focuses on fiction. We will have another long post in a while focusing on nonfiction, and a third one focusing on poetry. But tonight we're just going to tease out the differences between fiction and nonfiction. So yeah, you love content marketing for nonfiction. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, I do. And I've been doing it for a really long time. I actually started content marketing for nonfiction completely by accident. And I didn't know it was what I was doing for a really long time as well. But I was blogging and writing up lessons that I'd learnt on my journey to writing full time. And in sharing those, obviously, it is answering questions and solving problems for other people, which is usually what nonfiction content marketing is. It tends to focus on solving a problem, answering questions, or providing content on a particular theme related to a nonfiction book. And yeah, so I just started sharing all of these lessons on my blog, and then learned that I had very happily been content marketing for a while. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot in the indie world. You do things that make sense, and then somebody comes along and kind of names it, gives it a title, and then you realize what you've been doing all that time. So I love content marketing for fiction. Well, I love it generally. I think it's worth saying that one of the reasons why I think it's so great is because it actually allows you to take the mission and the passion and everything that made you want to write a book in the first place. And it's the only kind of form of marketing where you can take that and turn it into smaller pieces, which further the same kind of mission and passion. So it's all part of what you do. And you don't feel like it's just marketing. You're just trying to get people to buy the book. You're actually happy just maybe to get the point across, or just to talk about the beautiful place you set your novel in that you really love and want more people to know about, or whatever. So people often say to me, what is content marketing for fiction? They can't seem to quite kind of get their heads around what it can be. And the simple answer is that it's really anything to do with your book. So anything that kind of relates into your book. But there is a focused answer, which we will get to in a while. But before you kind of drill down into the focus stuff, just thinking about everything around your book. So your settings, quotes from the book, extracts, behind the book information about why you wrote this particular book, or where the characters came from, plot points, and where they emerged from, what they mean to you as the author. If you think about the books that you love to read and the authors that you admire and look up to, and think about how when you've really enjoyed a book, you really want to know more. You have that feeling of, give me more kind of thing. So that's what content marketing does. It kind of satisfies that for fiction. It satisfies that craving that the reader has to the story behind the story, if you like, more story about that particular thing. So anything it's good if it's personal, the themes, why you wrote this particular book and not another, maybe even TV or music or cinema that's related to your book, or that takes a similar approach to a topic that you're writing about. There's just so much you can do. And I think it's one of those things that you think, oh, I can't think of a single thing. And then when you start to think of one or two or three things, loads more come in behind it. So it's a sort of a 90-minute brainstorm to sit down with yourself and see how many different kinds of ideas you can have around your fiction, and then narrow those down to the ones you'd really like to do.
Yeah, and also I think one of the things that I am lucky with is that I read the genre that I write. So although obviously, but they say you aren't your ideal reader yourself, I am within the genre of ideal reader. So I think about the things that I would like, as you've mentioned, from other authors, but also things that are connected. So for example, you were mentioning films and music that's connected, but what about the music that you've listened to whilst you've been writing? Those are also things you would think that nobody would be interested. Oh, it's just what I listen to, I'm just the author. But actually, your readers want to get to know you personally. So do you have a pet that's always on your lap whilst you're writing. People love cat photos, you know, if you have a writing buddy, or, you know, do you have a type of food that you always snack on? You think these things aren't interesting, but actually if you formulate them into pictures or, you know, Instagram stories or whatever, this is all content marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's before you even get to the content of what's actually in the book. And I think it's really worth pointing out how lucky we are to have the options to do these things, because in the old days, and I remember them well, and it's not that long ago, the only way you could get information out about your book was to go on a book tour. So you had to go off and you know, sit at a chat show on TV if you were lucky, and radio more likely, local radio most likely, and talk about some aspect of your content, just exactly what we're talking about. But it was, you know, a couple of weeks around launch time, and it was exhausting. It was really grueling. You never felt satisfied by the experience. And as soon as you were finished, you thought of all those smart and wonderful pieces of snippets of content you should have shared. So we're so lucky now to be able to really kind of delve into this and really engage with our content from a different angle. And we say content, by the way, and not words. I know we're all wordsmiths, but we say content because video and audio can make up quite a bit of your content marketing, and possibly should, to give you a rest from the words thing, but also because people, you know, they'll hop on a video, they'll listen to an audio, and different readers like to consume content in different ways, and it's good to put it out there in lots of different ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's, I suppose, one other thing that I would add to the types of content for fiction, and it's the sharing the love of fiction itself. So rather than sharing always content about the book, or always content about the your words particularly, or the inspiration for the book, you can also just share in the love of reading. And I always call it like book nerdy stuff, or book geekery, but you can there are memes, for example, or, you know, I don't know, quotes or silly jokes about, you know, the love of writing or the love of reading, and those kinds of things also make up, you know, Instagram stories or Facebook page posts, or, you know, things like that.
Yeah, and you came up with this great idea of actually getting quite formal about the themes. And I found this really interesting, you know, dividing it up in that way. And we'll talk about the different kinds that you can do in a moment. I think we've covered them, but just again, to list them in a slightly more structured way. And I think, you know, this is important. After you've done you know, listened to everything we've said, thought about it yourself, done a big brainstorm, looked at all the different things you could do, then it's about, well, yeah, great, I could do it. It's like everything in indie author land. I could do a million things, but what am I actually going to have the time to do? What am I going to be able to take into my process so it doesn't take me away from, you know, the actual work of writing, and that it furthers it. And I mean, one of the things that I think is really important is consistency. So it's okay to take a break every now and again, because you probably will need to do that. But it's really important to be consistent in putting stuff out there and to not go away. As soon as you kind of go away, it takes a dip. And I think that's the other really important thing to say, is that this is not something that you do, you know, today you put out a piece of content and suddenly the readers come flooding in. I mean, very, very occasionally, and everybody talks about it, going viral, and it's almost never happens. And even when it does, I did have the experience of going viral once, back through Stumble Upon, which was a kind of a discovery tool that a lot of people were on back in 2012. And something, I can't even remember now what it was, just went crazy one day, and there were just literally, you know, thousands and thousands of people on my blog. And within a couple of weeks, only a few of those actually were still there. They were only interested in that one little thing. They came and they went, kind of thing. And I think what we're talking about here is a much slower, steadier build over time of people who really like what you do, who haven't just hopped in because of one particular topic, because that kind of wave, yeah, it comes in and it goes back out again. It's a long game, and it builds over a number of books, and it changes as you change. It develops with you. That's one of the the other good things about it, I think.
Yeah, and alongside that, I think is the point that it's actually incredibly hard to measure content marketing. Unlike paid advertising, where you are spending X pounds and you are seeing X number of book sales, you can quantify that. But content marketing, you cannot. There is no, I mean, yes, okay, you could measure the number of clicks from a blog post through to whatever, book platform you've put your link to. But, then if you're doing ads as well, then it's very hard to discern whether your sales are coming from the content marketing or from the paid advertising. So this is something that, lots and lots of people are doing. Therefore, you would hope that it is, reaping benefits. But you can see it from, for example, if you go onto somebody's podcast, you will see sales coming from that podcast, for a few days or a couple of weeks around when that podcast was launched. So there are ways and means of measuring it, but it is much, much harder, and just not to get disappointed or disheartened when you cannot directly measure, sales output from your content marketing. That's something that I would add.
Yeah, very important. And I think that's why it is so important that you like what you're doing, that you actually enjoy. It's like writing the book, it's as much for the joy of actually doing the thing itself as for the reward that you're going. You want both. You want to balance both the outcome, but you're not just focused on, getting as many likes as you can or getting as many shares as you can or whatever. You're actually also using it as an opportunity to do something that you find enjoyable. So we have Walt here, who is talking about finding the time to generate that content. He's saying that for him, that's the biggest challenge. And I think that's, the biggest challenge for everybody. And how you manage that, I think, is very important. How do you manage yours?
So I'm in the process of changing how I manage it, but and so I'm quite excited about this, which is why I want to talk about it. But repurposing is, I think, one of the best ways to prevent yourself from having to spend, hundreds and hundreds of hours always developing new content. So a very pertinent example is the fact that we wrote a content marketing blog post which went live today, and now we are taking that, and we have mentioned some of the things that are in that post, but we are also expanding on it and talking about some other things in this podcast, which is a second form of content marketing, but using the principles and the main themes from the blog post. After this podcast, we will then take both of those two things and add some more to it. And hopefully, potentially, it will become one of our quick and easy, or not so quick and easy, but, one of our comprehensive ALLi guides. So that is just 3 ways in which we can transform the same content. A few other things to throw in. We could create some graphics that take quotes out of our blog, and we could put those on social media. So we could have a tip of the day, for example, from the same blog post, because obviously different social platforms will reach different types of readers. So we are again repurposing the same content. You could, for example, do light bite 3-minute quick tip videos for YouTube using the same content from the blog post. So there are lots and lots and lots of different ways in which you could repurpose the same content. One last one, sorry, but as I was thinking. So once we have the guide, you could then, from the guide, you could then create a checklist, for example, for your content marketing, and you could use that as a reader magnet, and we could attach that to the blog post. So yeah, I get I'm all giddy and excited, but I love this repurposing and, being efficient. It's so efficient and effective, and I just love that.
The F words. She loves them. I think that's really good, repurposing. Okay, Walt, that's one way. And the other thing that I find really useful is I do it all once a week. I sit down and kind of do everything for next week. And that's something that I only started doing relatively recently. So I'd like to talk for a minute about how wrong I got all of this for a very long time, because I enjoyed it, I think. I never really minded, and I still don't mind. But I write across the three macro genre: poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. And I never really segmented properly. So I was kind of putting everything out everywhere and kind of always putting out stuff, but not in a very focused or directed way. And really very late in the game, considering how long I've been doing this, I started to actually work, and it was quite a bit of work, and in fact it's not quite complete, separating out so that the people who are interested in my poetry only hear about poetry from me. People who are interested in my historical fiction only hear about historical fiction. And I do have then a reader membership for people who like a bit of everything, because I do have a lot of people who read my work who are also ALLi members, or they're authors themselves, or creatives. So they do take an interest in all of that kind of stuff. So I do have that, but it's made very clear, this one's for you if you like a bit of everything. This is for you if you like fiction. This is for you if you like poetry. And even on the emails I send out every week, down at the bottom is, are you getting the right one? So segmenting all of that. And then I split up as well the different social channels for different kinds of. Now I've really got to discipline myself a bit better on this, but I'm trying to keep Facebook for fiction, Instagram for poetry, and Twitter for the self-publishing, the non-fiction, essentially self-publishing and creative stuff. And I think that's really important. It has made a huge difference to my poetry, particularly. Poetry was getting completely lost in and among everything else. So the rate of sign-ups for my list, poetry-wise, just went way up from a not very, from a low start. But yeah, it was really, really noticeable, and it's increasing more and more. And in fact, people, are now saying to me, I didn't know you wrote poetry, who are now kind of realizing it because it's been organized that way. So once a week I sit down, I work out what's going to go where. I have ideas during the week, of course, about things that I'd like to tweet or write, but they don't get sent out until next week unless they're time sensitive. They go into an Evernote notebook, and then on a Friday usually I sit down and work out what's going to go out the following week. And if I have a really crazy busy week, I don't get to doing the social end of it, but most weeks I do, and it's much more consistent. With most of the platforms, you can actually, schedule your stuff ahead. With some of them you can't, but you work that out, and you work out ways that you can do it quickly. So I think a lot of the time, the wasted time sometimes is just in the process of how you do your pictures, where you store them, how you kind of put them together with the words, all that kind of stuff. If you can work out a good rhythm for yourself on that, I think that's also a big time saver.
Yeah, and implementing a system. So, for example, you were talking about your graphics and images there. If you can create for yourself a template where perhaps you only change a color on an image, or if say you're always quoting yourself or quoting from a book or quoting your poetry, having a standard template where you can just drag and drop text, that also saves time, I think, and it's just creating a system there.
Exactly. So get a little bit more, perhaps, a little bit more, structured in terms of how you do it. I think is a big part of getting the time thing right. So talk to us. We've spoken quite a bit there about fiction. So just talk to us in terms of the content itself, the types of things that people do. Okay, we've spoken about how-to fiction, but there are other kinds, how-to nonfiction. There are other kinds of nonfiction, and there are other ways to do this. Any more kind of ideas?
So podcasting is another one, and you can create a podcast, obviously, for your nonfiction. And obviously, lots of people immediately think it has to be a writing podcast. It doesn't at all. You could do one on pregnancy. You could do one on stonemasonry. I don't know where that came from, but you could have a podcast on treating animals if you were a vet and you were trying to recruit new people there. So whatever your your content is, you can create a podcast around that. What else can you do? Obviously, we've spoken about blogging. Your mailing list, again, is a different type of content. Any social media that you do, doing lives as well, live events, be it on your Facebook, your YouTube, your Instagram. You can then take those files, transcribe them using free AI type software that just need a proof. And that, again, is creating different content. Audio books as well. You can pull chapters. You can pull a chapter from your audio book. That's a different type of content. You could, I think that's.
Yeah, lots to go there. And the other thing I think then finally probably that you need to think about is that different platforms are good for different kinds of content. So you can find, that doesn't mean you necessarily have to kind of use that one for that thing. Maybe going against the grain might actually be a way to get more attention on a particular platform. So I'm thinking that, Twitter is generally for people who have opinions and want to talk. It's kind of the chattering classes social medium, whereas Instagram is fantastic for poetry and clearly for anything visual and so on. So it's important that even if you're going against the grain, that you know what that platform is good for and that you're aware that you're changing it. In other words, that you know the rules before you try to break them. So not trying to, do the wrong thing on the wrong platform, knowing which platforms are visual, which are verbal, and so on. And also knowing which ones you like. So I think it's really important that you are a user and that you enjoy that particular platform, and probably not a good idea to spread yourself too thinly. So much better to do one and do it well and go deep and, be genuinely engaged on that platform. So it's not just about sharing your content. It's also about all the other great content that's on that platform and, sharing other people's stuff and seeing, getting to know people whose genre niche and micro niche are similar to yours, or readers who love that kind of work. That happens through engagement and genuine sort of enjoyment of the platform. It doesn't happen so much when you're going in with a very fixed agenda. I want to sell books, and here's how I'm going to do it today. So yeah, the platform that is enjoyable for you is the one to think about working with.
And then once you've decided your platform and you've decided your types of content, you mentioned earlier being consistent. And I think that is so, so important about the type of content that you're sharing as well. So if you are, for example, sharing about writing craft because you write writing craft nonfiction books, then don't then start posting pictures of your dinner because people aren't really interested in that, and that will then turn people off. So it's not just about posting consistently, as in once a day, roughly in the afternoon. It is also about then being consistent with the content and the type of content that you are pushing out into the world.
Really important, and that it aligns with the books. So you may write a lot of different books and you have to think about this, and that's why I split off in different directions. It was just too difficult for the people who liked to read the nonfiction to be listening to the person who wrote the poetry, because it's kind of so different. But if you can find something that gels across all of your work, then it's good to do that and to turn that then into a kind of a signature. So the people who do well with content marketing put a lot of time and thought, that whole concept of finding your voice when you're writing a fiction book or a non-fiction book. It's the same with the platform, the medium you choose to take your content out into the world. You need to find your voice on that platform, and you're probably likely to be there for a while before you begin to feel your way around that and to get a consistent sort of tonal register, I think is what we're talking about there. And the kind of engagement that actually does make people look at your profile and actually go over and think, I wouldn't mind buying that book. So you want the messaging that's going out there to be related enough to your book for that connection and bridge to be made, but not just to be a replicant, because you're going to write more than one book anyway.
Absolutely. you wrote a post a little while ago that really changed my thinking on this. And you mentioned about finding the thing that was uniquely you and using that as the umbrella. And I think it often comes not from the things that we like necessarily, because those tend to be contents, but from our inner values. And I think looking at our values and what we hold that's important quite often is one of the ways.
Sorry.
That's fine.
I don't even know where it is. Oh dear.
Finding the thing that you hold and value really important is one way, I think, easy way of finding an umbrella for yourself to go across all of your content.
That's such a good point you're making. It's going to stop now in a second. Sorry, I couldn't even find it. That's my family phone ring so that I know it's my son or my daughter. And I can hear it everywhere. And now you've all heard it too. Sorry about that, folks. You were making a really good point. So just in case people missed it, would you mind repeating it? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So a little while ago, you wrote a blog post and you were talking about finding something that is uniquely you and using that thing that is uniquely you to go niche and to attract readers who are like you. And I think one of the easier ways of doing that, rather than thinking about the types of content that you like, it's to think about what's inside and our values and what we hold dear, rather than just our likes and dislikes, because those things change and ebb with time, and they're sort of on the shallow surface of ourselves, whereas looking at our values and going deep, those don't really change. So I think that is a good place to find what's uniquely you.
Definitely, and make that the umbrella. And that means you're attracting people who have similar values to yours. And that's something that lasts. And that's what we're looking for here. Something that's kind of sustainable and scalable and that grows over time, so that and if it's coming from that deep place, as we said at the beginning, it's going to be part of you, and you're going to enjoy doing it for its own sake. And I think that's really key as well. So we are almost out of time. So yeah, any final tips, or all tipped out?
No, well, we have had a couple of comments. I don't know if we want
to. Just if there's anything there.
So I think the name is Gippy. Gippy Henry says, as a tip, they don't have much time, and so they've actually found a family member who can help. And so that's one thing you can always look at, is getting family members to help you. And in particular, they're using their granddaughter because I'm assuming they're young and know about social media, perhaps more so than even, anybody else, and so therefore teens and tweens today are helping her and gives her some pocket money. So I think that is one thing. If it doesn't bring you joy, as Marie Kondo might say, then can you hire this out? Can you find help to do this?
Get the help with the bit you don't love. So presumably Gippy doesn't love the tech bit, but then you can concentrate on the actual core of the content, which is probably the bit that you do enjoy. But I think it's important to also say that it isn't a handoff situation when you are, whether you're hiring help or whether it's a family member or somebody, no matter what, they need to fully understand what the end game is, what you're trying to achieve, the kind of values you are working from, the kind of people you hope to attract, and so on. So it's something you would work very closely together. So there's compliments there from AB Gibson, who says this has been terrific. Great, that's good. I'm glad. And next time, do you know what's on the cards for next time? Because it's you and Adam. Just putting Sacha on the spot there. Don't worry. We will put it into the show notes, what you can expect next time on the Fiction Nonfiction podcast, and this will appear in audio on our blog Friday week, and we'll have all the show notes and links and things to the content marketing guide that we were talking about on the blog, which you can find at selfpublishingadvice.org/fiction-content-marketing. So that's it for this week. We'll be back next week with the member Q&A. Till then, happy writing, happy publishing, happy author business.
Bye.
Bye.